Okay, you are all good. Thank you.
Action. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Village of New Paltz Planning Board meeting, regular meeting on June 4th, 2024. I am Rich Sudo, and I'm the acting chair for tonight in Zach Bilecki's absence. I also want to, and I'll ask for your consideration and grace for that, and also want to introduce Mike Baden, the newest member of the village team, who in a different capacity will in a different role, but in his new capacity will be filling the responsibilities that Autumn once had for planning and zoning. So we're excited to have Mike. He's got lots of experience and he hit the ground running as far as I can tell. So thanks, Mike, for being here.
Good to be here.
So we have 5 applications to review today and a couple other things to handle up front. So we'll get started, please, with approval of the May 21st minutes. Is there any further discussion about those minutes? And if not, can I have a motion to approve the May 21st minutes?
So moved.
Second. Can I ask this, humor me, since I'm still learning names, if you could just.
Yeah.
Amy
definitely.
Cullen, so
Thank you.
moved.
Thank you.
Terry Dolan, second.
Appreciate it very much.
And all in favor?
Aye.
I wasn't at the meeting.
I wasn't at the meeting.
Yeah.
Clever pun. So, but we have enough votes and you
Still
can
vote to
vote too,
approve the minutes,
Yeah.
even if I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Okay,
if you reviewed them.
I tried, but I
Okay.
went at that access thing came up.
Okay, thanks. There's someone else in the waiting room, Mike.
Okay.
All right, great. And just in time, Bill Murray, we have any updates from the village board or Ulster County Planning Board?
Sure. Just briefly, no real update from the last meeting, Ulster County Planning Board meets tomorrow. To reiterate what you said, Mike Baden has begun. I've worked with Mike, on the planning board for about 8 years. When Mike speaks, we listen. He's been a terrific asset to our county and to our region. And, once again, I want to welcome Mike, to, the Village of New Paltz.
Great.
So that's my update.
Yeah.
You're clapping because it's brief.
Well, you did the intro justice. I didn't want to act like I could introduce Mike properly, so thanks for that. And then any updates from the Environmental Policy Board liaison?
I don't know, I don't think we've met since the last, we only meet once a month.
Okay,
So, we had a joint meeting though. And, it was, and maybe this, I wasn't at the last meeting, so yes, I have an update. We had a joint meeting and, we discussed a variety of things. It seems like it's would be very complicated to merge the two boards, even though it's probably the best thing to do. Because we have such a small, board in the village and because the environment doesn't really care about municipal boundaries and, most of the property that has environmental resources is right on the edge of the village and town. In fact, it almost always gets annexed in one way or another. So it would make sense for those two boards to be together. But the bureaucratic gobbledygook that we would have to go through would be crazy. So I think, I don't know whether that's gonna get resolved or how that's gonna get resolved, but I think we're gonna try to meet together more often because a lot of times we don't have quorum. We have almost no members on the village environmental policy board. And so that would be really good if that could happen. And they expressed some concern about the sewage treatment plant because it's under a consent order. And even though we're gonna be putting in all these new developments and they all have to make pump stations or whatever, it still all has to go to the sewage treatment plant. So they were expressing some concerns about that. I'm not sure what else really came up, but there's gonna be, we're gonna be, we have a new town supervisor, who's, very aware of environmental issues and everything, so we're cool. They don't want us to, the town, some of the people in the town don't think the village should annex the property at, New Paltz Apartments. They think that it should stay in the town and then the town should just buy the water from the village and sell it back to the people. I don't know, that's about it in a nutshell.
Okay,
I hope I did,
thanks, Rachel.
you're welcome.
And we usually have a report from the town planning. board.
It wasn't on the agenda, so I didn't know if you wanted me to do it or not.
Absolutely,
But I did not prepare one for this evening because I didn't know if you wanted one or
no
not.
problem.
But
I
if
will,
it is on the agenda, I'll be happy to prepare one in the future.
yeah, let's make sure we do that. Mike,
Yeah, you wanted that out,
Yeah.
so, report from the town planning board?
Yep,
Yes, I usually do that if it's
Okay.
on the agenda.
Yeah, I just copied the previous agenda, so we will make sure that next time.
Thank you.
thanks. All right, thanks everyone for reporting in. Next, we have the opportunity for public comment. This is for public comment on any issue that you want to bring to the planning board, not for any particular application. So is there anyone online and or in person for public comment? Okay. And we don't have any public hearings today, so we'll move right on to the first application for review.
Should we note that there were public hearings scheduled for tonight, but we were unable to advertise them on time, so we'll be rescheduling those. I
Okay.
don't think anyone was here for that necessarily, because
Oh.
it wasn't on the agenda, but in case anyone was wondering,
Okay, so
How many of them were there?
there were two.
Who were they?
the 218 Main, which we'll reschedule, and the was there two today?
18 Mulberry, I think? 18 Mulberry.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was scheduled for a public hearing tonight, I believe, but
Yeah.
it didn't get advertised in time, so that public hearing will be rescheduled.
Oh, so what's the next?
The application review with the board. Sorry, Rich.
That's okay, thanks for clarifying that. So within each one of those applications, we'll get that out. Is there is there something we want to share about the way that the reason that the advertisements didn't get out?
I don't know the details.
Okay, it's just administrative issues.
I believe so.
Mike, anything we want to explain to the applicant?
No, I don't know, it was before I started the day after Memorial Day, which
Okay.
would have been too late, but I actually wasn't aware that there were any scheduled, so. But we will definitely get these out in the next couple days, so they can be scheduled for the next meeting.
Okay, so during each one of the applications, we'll explain to the applicant just how that works and how we're gonna ensure that it won't go wrong this time. So the first application for review is PB 24 -08 21 Colonial Drive. The applicant is New Paltz Gardens, which is a site plan amendment for a pool and clubhouse. You come up. Hello, nice to see you again.
Carmela Conley, president of New Paltz Gardens.
Thanks. Thanks, Carmela. So if we remember, this application is for site plan amendment involving replacing a pool, adding landscaping and walkways, and adding a 2-bathroom addition on the outside of an existing garage at an existing multifamily apartment complex. The project is on an 11-acre site in the R3 zoning. This application's been reviewed through a couple of meetings, and I think in our last meeting, we had no further questions or comments and agreed to draft the resolution. So before I get into the resolution, do you have any questions, or do any members of the board have any additional questions?
Last time you were here, you mentioned an openness to looking into what types of pesticides are applied on the grounds. And so I'm curious as to if you have anything to say about it.
Do you want to give me your email address? I can send it to you.
Sure.
How's that?
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Camilla. Yeah.
Oh,
I don't
yeah,
think you
I
corrected
just-
last time.
How do what's the best way for me to contact you to give you my email address?
Can I give you my email address?
Sure.
Okay, it's CC ONKLYN at Campson with a K, AMSONCORP.com. And you can, it's on file too. You can probably get it in case.
Great. You can get it from Mike if you
Yeah,
missed that.
yeah, he definitely has it.
Any other questions?
Thank you for taking pride in your property and improving it.
Yeah, it's gonna be so much better.
Sounds great.
So looking forward to it. Yeah,
Great.
it's not pretty right now. We'll get there.
So, as usual, we'll read through just the unique components of the application. So Remember, the summaries, they seeks approval of a site plan amendments to the New Paltz Gardens apartment complex to replace an existing pool, add landscaping and construct a 2-bathroom addition on an existing garage. The property is an 11-acre lot located 21 Colonial Drive, New Paltz. The typical elements of the site plan are here. And there's one specific condition. And the condition is this approval applies to the area of the property surrounding the pool as shown in the plans referenced above, with the exception of the amendments approved herein, the requirements of the original 1965 site plan and any subsequent amendments approved by the planning board shall remain in effect. Do you have any questions about that? That makes sense. Okay, so with that, we can move for, like we typically do, a voice vote of each member whose names you don't know, so we'll have to both offer our names and our vote. And then we'll sign and record this, and also the resolution has Zach's name. I'm just gonna cross it out and put mine before I sign. So well, how about we start at this end of the table for a voice vote? Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So move.
Second.
So the move was Terry Dolan,
Sure. Yeah.
second Rachel Agata, and then let's all just share our name and our vote.
Terry Dolan? Yes.
Rachel Lagatka, yes.
Rich Sudo, aye.
Amy Cohen, aye. Nikki Nielsen, aye. What is it?
Okay, great. So resolution's approved.
I don't.
And I'm going to.
So I just said that, any good news.
Congratulations.
Thank you
Great,
so much.
congrats.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Next application is a site plan amendment for mixed use for PB 24-11, 218 Main Street. Is there anyone from there here today? Okay,
Well, maybe because
they might have been informed that there was no public hearing, so they aren't here today. Well, let's take a look at what we know or need to know about the application and see if there's anything we want to move forward or comment on that might be relevant the next time they're here. So I'm looking for an email. So if we recall, it's a previous approved site plan to renovate an existing office building. The application requests, at this time, the application requests amendment of the site plan to change the first floor of the building to a retail bakery, which is a permitted use, and make various changes to the site design. I know it says retail bakery, and I don't know the exact terminology, but we also determined in some of our prior conversations that it's a retail bakery that also is producing baked goods that will sell outside of their
So it's wholesale.
existing food. So it's technically also a wholesale operation by virtue of that. And there's special use permit approval for outdoor cafe seating associated with the bakery. So what we were looking at in our last time together was kind of an integrated site plan. We considered traffic and parking as a consideration, given now that it's a retail establishment that will be seeing customers. We decided that we were ready to move forward with the public hearing, and because the advertising didn't get out in time, it's not going to be tonight. So the first thing I'd like to do is ask for a resolution for us, ask for motion for us to postpone the public hearing for PB 24-11, 218 Main Street from today, June 4th, to 2 weeks from today, June 18th meeting.
So moved. A second. Amy Cohen, so moved.
Okay,
Rachel Lagatka, second.
thank you.
And then all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then Mike, they're not here, but just for the record, the assurance that we'll get the advertising.
Yes, we will.
moving so that it's-
And to clarify, there were a couple questions you had about the grease trap.
Yeah,
I spoke with Alex, who verified that anything involving a grease trap would be internal within the building, would be nothing exterior. Tried to get the plans to the head of DPW, but he and I weren't able to connect. And so I will get them to him, but the feeling is anything with an exhaust would just be a small exhaust fan sort of cover on the side of the building. And that was Alex's two thoughts on the two questions that were raised.
okay. And I know he also sent a memo about that, if anybody has any, so we can start there. Thank you, Mike. Just the question around the commercial kitchen requirements that we learned about. One was the idea of a grease trap, the other was the idea of the ventilation and any other mechanicals that might be evident from outside. Does anyone have any questions other than what Mike shared and what we received from Alex in his memo?
I did have a couple questions.
All right, so can I hold on one second, Amy, please? Let's raise these as issues that we can record. And then we'll just have them recorded for when the applicant is here, because we'll, I don't want to lose your points, but at the same time, we don't have them here. So, yeah, what are the
I'm not
issues?
necessarily qualifying them as issues, they're just points that I want to bring up in a conversation with the applicant.
Great,
I'm curious about the loading dock, about the volume of the wholesale. Is this wholesale to a couple cafes that are local? Or are we doing large scale wholesale where we're shipping across the country and we're delivering all over the place? Are there gonna be multiple trucks or is there one truck? How many trips per day? Do we have to pick up the raw goods and bring them out? So that's, we have to get the stuff there, so we may be unloading. And then we also have the reloading so that we can redistribute whatever we've been wholesaling. So that was the question that I had. This is gonna be a constant movement of trucks.
great.
What are they baking? Do you know?
Organic, baked goods, like vegan, yeah, vegan, like.
Like
Like,
croissants and
like
cookies
gluten
and
free.
things.
Okay, so pastry, kind of like sweets, okay, breads,
Maybe breads too.
okay. I think they currently have or had a business on the other side of the river, is what they said.
Oh.
Yeah,
they're
they're
outgrown
outgrown,
that.
I hope they don't keep these tracks.
I think it's a requirement of commercial kitchen. Yeah, you have to separate what's happening. Okay, thanks, Amy. So we'll make sure, that, and one thing I would suggest is the site plan, does account for some loading, but I think in terms of volume and frequency.
That's just my question.
good question.
I mean, it could be very low key and that really isn't an issue at all.
Yep, great. And moving on to the next item, there are responses that the applicant furnished in the special use permit that is in their application. If anyone has any questions about anything that was in there. I personally thought that their responses were adequate and that there really aren't any flags with regard to the elements of the application, the usage, any impact or disturbance that might be anticipated. But I'm just making sure others saw the few questions that they answered at the conclusion of the.
Where's the cafe? It doesn't, is it this?
The cafe is it's within here. The plan doesn't, in this
doesn't
particular
mark-
diagram, it doesn't
It doesn't show.
indicate
where the
exactly.
building is.
And then it's the outdoor area. Here.
So it would be here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So any questions about their responses for the special use permit questionnaire?
Good.
All right, we've already rescheduled the public hearing. The last question for the board is whether we think, keeping in mind this was already an approved application with some modifications that they're asking us to consider in the special use, which is an approved use, which is a permitted use. Do we believe that it should be re-referred to Ulster County Planning Board based on the changes that this bakery use has proposed?
I was just going through and kind of making sure we checked all the boxes, and I
Yeah.
just thought that was worth the
What
board
was it gonna be?
deciding if these changes rise.
It wasn't, a new tenant wasn't ever proposed or contemplated. I think maybe it was gonna be professional offices of the owner. So it didn't have any kind of retail use or, active commercial use in original application. And I guess the questions would be,
Excuse me, if I'm remembering correctly, wasn't that referred fairly recently though? Or am I
It's-
wrong?
It's been, your memory is correct, it's been referred twice because there was an amendment to the original site plan.
Yeah.
And I personally, I don't think there's enough of a change here that we would need to, there's not been any problems identified so far, but.
I agree.
It's up to you all.
I agree 100%. I just want to make sure I let members of the board decide if they thought it was the
You,
board.
you could do a referral resolution and I can send it to them, and if they say, no, we don't need to see it, then you're covered. That is one way.
So the option for it to be referred if they ask for it.
Well, no, I would send it to them and have their referral director look at it, and
Okay.
oftentimes they'll look at it and say, no, you didn't need to send this.
And not wait for a meeting in other words.
No.
if they-
Yeah.
How long would that?
Well,
Okay.
actually, I take that back, because we meet tomorrow night, so it wouldn't be until, the referral wouldn't be reviewed until
Next month.
July,
Yeah,
so.
unless you think otherwise, Mike, I don't think it's
It was
required.
recently referred, so I don't believe it
The
needs.
changes are substantive enough to require. If everybody agree with that, we don't need a resolution, just making sure there's no opposition to that.
They already they already did the building, which looks really good. I mean, I like
Yeah,
the big glass in the front is really nice. I hate it when they make these buildings with these itty bitty windows. I'm comfortable without a referral.
Okay, great. All right, so we have a rescheduled public hearing, which we already moved. We have comfort with the commercial kitchen requirements, and Mike, you're gonna just triple check with DPW to make sure they don't have any new
yes.
ideas about that,
unfortunately,
which we'll know before the next meeting.
Yeah, Blue was out the last, or unavailable the last couple of days, so I'll connect with him.
No problem. Great, so that's as far as we can get from now with, especially without the applicant present, but when they come back, we'll have a hearing. We'll make sure we ask the final questions about any of the items we have. And then that should put us in a position where we can consider drafting a resolution. All right, next application is a site plan review. It is PB 2410 18 Mulberry Street. It's a residential building converting a two-family to a single-family dwelling. Andrew Jesse Davis.
Yep.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Would you-
David Kubik from DKSD Architects.
Great, thanks. So we all recall it's an application to renovate and build two additions to an existing house on 0.6 acres in R3 zoning. It's currently a two-family home, and the renovated structure will be a single-family home with some additional features, decks and a garage. Apologies if you weren't aware, but we do need to reschedule the public hearing. There's a public notice requirement for the public hearing, which is 10 days. The public notice requirement.
I can't remember.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah, so it's 10 days prior to it, and that's obviously just to make sure that all your neighbors are able to be informed about it and be here, and that didn't happen on schedule.
Okay.
We did ask for some consideration. We're experiencing some transitions here, but we'll get it right. So as long as we're on the subject, just ask for a motion to postpone the public hearing for PD 24-9 18 Mulberry Street from today to our next meeting on June 18th.
So moved.
Second. Terry Dillon. Thank you.
So.
And Rachel, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, great. So we'll have a public hearing. It'll be at the opening of the next meeting, so if you could be here for the beginning, that'd be great.
David, can you? I'm not sure I can.
Yeah.
Is it okay if the architect's not in person?
It is.
Okay, okay, good. Worst case, something can be on Zoom. Terrific.
It could be on Zoom. You could just learn the transcript.
Sure. Yeah, no, we'll have someone. Okay.
Great.
I think they're supposed to be in person. Do they need to be in person? or no?
It's not required.
Okay.
It's sometimes neighborly, but it's not required.
We might just be out of town.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
and then we're sorry it's not today when you were expecting it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not required for you to be here, but,
Okay, great. Thank you.
okay, the project was referred to DPW, to review driveway and utilities, and I don't know, Mike, did we get any feedback on, 18 Mulberry Street, PB 22-9?
Not that I'm aware of. I can, quickly double check here in my emails if you'd like, but nothing that I.
I don't think we did either, and if not, I think it would be helpful if you could just double check with them. I think you're about to check your email on live Zoom stream,
Oh.
which I've done in my.
Make sure you're comfortable.
I've done lots of times. But
We
I don't
did
know if
add,
we-
we did add a few dimensions just so they could see exactly where the driveway lands.
okay, is that a new plan that would have that
The one that
detail?
we resubmitted for this hearing.
Okay.
Just received new plans,
Yeah.
yeah, so we should make sure DPW gets the.
Gets the
latest
newest
stuff,
one.
yeah.
Okay,
And they did include the things we discussed, like the setback and removing the lot line, that's.
oh, yeah, right. there's
For
some
that old
corrections.
legacy line, yeah.
Okay, great. So there's a new plan submitted that is in the record. I didn't know that that was in the folder, but we can take a look at that before the public hearing, just in case.
Yeah.
It's also good that that's now submitted because that can be the plan. The public can see if they have any questions about the hearing. That will also be the basis for a quick review from DPW, just to make sure the driveways and utilities all meet their requirements around safety and use. And in the new plan, would you mind if you could share with one of them? Can you show?
The date of the new plan was 5/28/24.
Don't know if this date is fresh or not. But I know we sent all new hard copies to planning and zoning. This is.
On that plan,
Yeah.
the one other point we had was the discussion about the potential for the solar array that you were
Yes.
considering putting on a portion of the addition.
Correct.
And how is that currently labeled?
We talked about removing the word possible.
Uh-huh.
So it just simply says future solar panel array.
I'll take one.
Yeah, that's great.
Which one is it?
A102 would be the best. What's the people asleep folder? Yes, yes.
4. Probably one that isn't showing.
Just fold that.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, find this.
This one?
No, it's more long.
I don't see a 102. Okay,
Oh, no, that's not it either. Yeah.
I see everything except the 102.
Strange.
I have 101.
Well, I can give you the half size set if you'd like.
Okay.
It should be the same.
Yeah, none of them are labeled 102.
So while we're looking, just be reminded, we were just confirming that the way that solar array, that possible future solar array was indicated on the plan was something that we wanted to go ahead and approve for future, for that option to be for them for the future. Removing possible makes it just better that it says
Yeah.
future solar array. So I don't even think that would require any special condition or anything in the resolution. It's just an approval.
Means it
that
all,
is-
yeah, has to go get a permit anyhow.
Yeah, they'll still have to get building permits. They
still
just
have-
have to-
Yeah, I just wanted to check with the code enforcement officer that he wouldn't hold up a CO until that was in place, but he said no, he said it's fine, just say future.
Great, and let's make sure that's on.
The only other new piece of information on there is the mechanical equipment on the right side of the house, which we spoke to Autumn about. So she cited the section that we needed to comply with. You can see there's a little text note there.
Yeah.
So that's where we would locate the condenser units with a little simple enclosure like that section asks for.
Yep.
So that's the only new piece of information that you didn't see last time.
Okay, so it indicates, it demonstrates where the enclosure will be. and that it is, finished to match the new siding.
Correct.
And, that it's above the base plane of the mechanicals themselves.
Yeah.
Which is according to the code. And all of the setbacks include that enclosure. Does the side setback include that enclosure?
It's within that setback.
It's in the setback, yeah.
Okay,
It might be okay.
Is that okay?
Is there some?
We did ask Autumn that specifically,
Yeah.
and she just said that as long as we meet that standard in that section that's listed there, that it was okay. As long as it was within an enclosure.
What is side yard setback?
it's probably 12.5,
Sometimes there's something about
12.6,
things protruding from the building that are okay.
yeah.
Building is 13.3.
Yeah, the side setback is 12.5. And-
Enclosures,
Mike, is that something you can confirm for us? What we're asking about is the mechanicals in the enclosure.
Mhm.
And I just don't know this off memory, and the mechanicals in the enclosure are in the setback, and so they end up,
I will go double check the code, but I believe those are exempted.
Yeah.
If they're the mechanical, but let me,
okay,
I can probably actually just check it here on my phone because you guys.
Okay. and Autumn usually has a pretty good handle on that too, but I just want to make sure, so you're not
Sure, yeah.
having to change it. at
That's what I
public
wanted to
hearing.
make sure, make sure it's not.
not to put too fine a point on it, Mike, but it's not just the mechanicals, these are enclosed mechanicals
Okay,
Is it on the ground or is it?
Something.
Yeah.
on the ground.
So the enclosure stretches about 5 feet beyond the house, so that it's midway almost into the setback. So we'll confirm that.
Okay.
And then, it looks like the driveway and all of that is, super clear in order to be considered by DPW.
And the utilities are noted on that plan too, in terms, like
Yeah.
right at the front, you can see where the utilities are.
Any other questions, from members about this application?
I think to be fair to everybody, I think we do need the answer to that encroachment, if there is an encroachment in the side yard setback.
Yep.
Because that sometimes not easy to move those things from one side of a building to the other.
Pretty important for us to have it on that side.
Put them in the back.
Yeah, let's
One in
double,
Front.
Mike's gonna double check, and worst case scenario,
Did you say there was a section of code cited?
Yes, I have it on that drawing.
Section G4. Parenthetically F.
Well, what number?
mechanical enclosure per section, I don't
How
know,
searchable is that?
so it says here, the following projections into required yards may be permitted. Open fire escapes, 4 feet in the side or rear yard, awnings and movable canopies, cornices, eaves, and other similar architectural features. Any open or enclosed porch or carport accessories, uses not enclosed in the building may be located in a rear yard, so. That's the only ones I see in the code itself with the modification, but. I'm not saying that it might not be somewhere else. That's all I'm finding at the moment.
Is that section that you're reading, titled section G?
That's 140-12
Okay,
modification of yard requirements.
One.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, apologies. Google took me to town. of Google.
Yeah. It should be 212.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
sorry.
Ours is very similar, actually, because I was looking, it has the fire escapes and all that.
Yeah, those are fairly standard,
Yeah.
apologies. Yeah, take a moment.
so here's my suggestion. I understand that would be a big challenge and change. If Mike has the answer within minutes, then we'll have that answer within minutes. If not, maybe you could check back with the building department tomorrow. Because, if it would, it's my recollection that the mechanicals themselves can, because of course they hang on the side of these buildings all the time. The split units.
Yeah.
Once you've created the enclosure,
Well, and the only reason we created the enclosure is because I think the zoning section asks you
The
to
code
create the enclosure.
requires it
Yeah.
to be.
The zoning enclosure, it's not really a building code issue, but it's the village of New Paltz zoning section that we cited that
Right.
said that they should be an enclosure.
Right,
So the permitted exceptions actually pretty much mirror the town, the open fire escapes awnings. It is letter E under 212-19.
Oh, wait, I think I found. Hmm. Oh, that's, no, wrong district, sorry.
Unenclosed,
Keep looking.
so unenclosed accessory uses, but that's not what this would be, I don't believe.
no,
Awnings and canopies, but this is.
that's not that either. All right, my suggestion.
We'll have to continue searching.
Yeah, my suggestion is but we definitely want to double check that. You wouldn't want you to have that.
Sure.
And, so what we can confirm is two things. One is whether it's true that it's absolutely requires enclosure, because they may be, pre-existing, but I know there are several that are not enclosed throughout, different zones and areas in the village. So let's confirm it requires an enclosure. And then confirm the enclosure shall have to be 5 feet into the setback.
Sure. Okay.
And if that is, if either of those things are, if those things both let us move this forward, then we'd absolutely be ready for the public hearing.
Sure.
If not, we could still hold the public hearing in our next meeting, but it may have a condition that says, or there may be a discussion about a change that's needed there, so that even if we pursue a resolution, it would have a condition that that change was going to be made before the resolution.
Sure, and
Since
if-
it's not major and structural and all those other things, it can be something that we build into the
Right.
the way forward,
Needs to be addressed.
but it would need to be addressed.
Right, and is there any process for seeking like a variance or permission to do it if it didn't
Yes,
comply?
but.
Like the house thing, part of the reason why they're there is because we're keeping the existing house and we need access to the cellar. Where all the mechanicals are.
Yeah.
So we're kind of hemmed in,
Yeah,
we can't really flip it to another place, like the additions don't have cellars. So it's really the right place to do it, so
mhm.
if there's, and we are keeping the existing house, we're not starting from scratch, so.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of relief there?
Well, the
If
general-
What are you
needed?
talking about? Is it an oil tank or something?
No, just like your air conditioning
HVAC.
condenser,
Back to this.
you know, those little split system condensers,
Oh, the mini splits?
yeah.
Those
No,
don't usually
not
have
every-
an enclosure.
That's what we're gonna find out.
I see them all over the place.
Yeah.
Electricity and mechanical equipment. What are they doing?
I'll check that with Alex tomorrow.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, they're all over, like,
Or
look
maybe
at
just
that,
suppress
that-
it.
Let's
there.
just double check the
Problem.
different zone, sometimes they have different
Yeah.
codes within the subzone, so
building on.
we're gonna check that. And, yes, there is a procedure for a variance,
Yeah.
you would have to go to the zoning board of appeals. Which means we would refer you to the zoning board, and then you would, submit an application there, you would have a meeting there, you'd have a public hearing there, and then you'd come back. It could be 90 days to get a variance for something like this, if they were to approve it,
Right.
if they were to approve it.
Right.
So let's just try to make sure we can get you within code, and then if we can't, that could be a decision you'd make.
Right, and then not to belabor this, but so. Could that be a condition like prior to
No,
sign off or anything
no,
like
we
that?
wouldn't be able to approve a resolution if you had a variance. Variance is something that has to be decided first, and then it integrates into the application, and then it.
Makes sense,
We could be-
so we could come back, if we close the loop with you offline and that requires a variance, we can relocate them. Somewhere else that doesn't require a variance and then always pursue the variance later.
Yeah, as long as
So it
that
approves
place,
the location, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We just don't wanna hold up their
You're
ability to
using
start.
one unit and having that go to different rooms, I mean, because a lot of times.
there are three here.
Three, but usually they're not, they don't even need to be in the same spot.
Well,
Let's let them decide that
Yeah.
based on first the determination of whether the code requires you to do it the way you're doing it, and whether you're allowed to do it the way you're doing it, and then we'll have an answer.
Okay.
And then I like the way you're thinking about working around it, best case scenario, would be find a place where it does fit according to code. And the worst case scenario is you could find a place that's less than ideal for you and have the application approved, and if you thought you wanted to do it
Amend it
differently
later.
later, you could, but you'd be taking the risk but the ZBA wouldn't approve it. So
Understood,
then you'd have to build it according to.
understood.
I'm sure I can get an answer from Alex tomorrow, so I
Yep.
can email everybody involved and
Right on.
we'll have the answer by the end of
And
tomorrow.
then, lastly, I think, just from my own education, the public hearing is essentially the same format as this. It's just the ability for the public to make
Yeah.
comment. That,
Yeah.
just to set expectations of.
Yes,
Yeah.
people can submit written or appear for comment online or here.
Right.
And it happens at the beginning of the meeting,
Yeah.
and we didn't have any today, but that's what would have happened at the
And we
beginning.
should probably be ready to present from scratch for people who don't.
No, the way the public hearing works is, it's based on all the prior conversation and, application review that occurred at the meeting.
Okay.
Which is all, available in minutes,
Sure.
and then also online, all your material is publicly available.
Okay, so the
So,
conversation.
public
kind of picks
hearing,
up where it left
It's
off.
not a conversation, it's the public making comments in the context of the hearing
Okay,
about your application, if
Uh-huh.
any.
Yeah.
And then they conclude that,
Uh-huh.
and then we have an application review.
Yeah.
That would consider any comments in the public hearing.
Gotcha.
But it's not a dialogue between the public and the applicant, or the public and the board even.
okay.
So it's basically people bringing things that we might have missed or that are particular concern to them, and
Yep.
it's often really fruitful, things that we might not even know because we're not
Yep.
the neighbor, but it's often also pretty quiet and low key and moves right along.
No problem, just want to make sure we were understood.
Yeah,
The
thanks for the
process.
questions. Anybody have anything else?
All set?
All right, so we'll get it to the next step, and thanks, Mike, for the commitment to that follow-up. Excuse me.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Show me on the drawing where.
Yeah, you.
Oh, yeah, it's here. You can keep this one. Mike.
Yeah.
All right. We're moving on to PB 24-04, 3 Water Street, the Herbal Confectionery LLC. Our board colleague Amy Cohen is recused from this application review. So she's gonna find a seat in the audience. Hi, welcome.
Hi, good evening.
Can you identify yourself for Mike?
Yes, hi Mike, I'm Michael Nelson, Chief Operating Officer of Herbal Confectionery LLC. Also here with us tonight, we have our Chief Executive Officer, Lisa Barone, who will be sitting down in just a moment.
Okay. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for coming back.
Yes, we appreciate it. And I know, sorry for any of the delays, but yes, so here we have Lisa Barone.
Hey, Lisa.
Yes, so sorry for the delay. It took us a little bit of time to get in touch with a land surveyor that could do a project of 2 lots on short notice. So we called up a friend and had her take care of that. And we passed it along to another engineer who submitted the details for the parking lot.
And Sculpture Park plan.
Right. I think that was something that we kind of touched base on at the last meeting, just needing a site plan for review.
This just got put in the folder today, but that is the
Yeah,
one
that's what we
showing the
sent.
marking.
Okay,
I printed one copy, so if you don't.
okay. And I have it in mind, so.
Yeah, it's in the folder.
Yeah, so that was in response to Alex's questions to the site plan that we submitted. I think it was just right before the Memorial Day weekend holiday, so I know there was a little lapse between the.
It was actually right after.
Right,
Yeah.
It was midweek last week.
and Mike, your Autumn's stand-in now,
Yes.
correct? So.
Replacement.
Replacement, yeah.
Permanent.
Yeah, and Alex and I spoke pretty thoroughly on this, so if the board would like, I could sort of relay his questions and thoughts, so.
Okay, so let's set the stage. We are, 3 Water Street is a property, it's an application for site plan, your application is for site plan and special use permit approval for, your new use, which is the Herbal Confectionery. And it's an existing building, included the 20.29 acre parcel and, the parking, which are both in the Gateway zoning district. The new uses include a cannabis dispensary and a farm store on the first floor. And upstairs apartments will be used for office space and employee residential use. Parking is on a separate parcel across Water Street, and that's what showed in the diagram about. So, as I understand the way the property's use has come about is the farm store is already open and in operation because that was a permitted use that could begin happening immediately.
Correct.
And so that's already happening.
Yes.
You're proposing for the addition of the cannabis dispensary.
Yeah.
Which would then operate alongside of the farm store simultaneously at all times, depending on their own hours and things.
Yes.
Yeah,
Can I get a procedural question answered? Because the farm stand is an existing, it was already a retail store. The farm would, I think, be retail. I don't know exactly if it was. Once you add the dispensary, is this now a total re-review of including the farm store, or is the farm store carved out of this review?
Yeah,
I do believe Alex worked pretty diligently to come up with some information regarding the use for the building. There wasn't a lot in the municipal records in terms of an existing site plan, or there was actually somewhat of some confusion about the use and the zoning. They were sort of in conflict with what the building was allowed to be used for, because according to the municipal search record, it was supposed to be a mixed use office. So there was sort of some confusion about that, but I believe Alex found something from.
it was a fire inspector.
So a variance dating back to the 80s that allows for 4 uses in the building. So 4 separate uses are allowed to be used there, and we are allowed, that building is allowed to have the 2 residential apartments, but it cannot be added. We cannot add residents to the
first
existing
floor.
2.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
So-
the farm store has its own egress. You cannot enter either of those locations through the building.
okay. So let's, yeah. Good, I was just gonna ask if you could answer, Nikki,
store sell?
Could- it sells,
We sell specialty produce and farm goods from the region. So we also are the operators of another business, that's Windfall Farms LLC, the occupant of the farm store. And we're specialty produce. We're no spray.
We're a generational family farm. So we have a slew of other small farmers within the region that all sell value-added goods within our store, and we sell our entire produce list as well as our value-added goods that we make.
thanks. So to Nikki's question, which is that use is already underway. But Nikki's question was, do we now need to look at an integrated use of the property and the parking? Because they will now be operating simultaneously, and Emily, you wanna share that?
So there's the basic issue we need to deal with is that there's no site plan for this site. It's been operating, one business after another, but there is no site plan that's ever been approved by the planning board as to how the site is supposed to function. So as far as the uses, the code has certain uses that are permitted, and then there's a category for retail, business, or service not otherwise specifically mentioned, and that's the one that we've put cannabis dispensaries in, because it's not specifically mentioned otherwise. And that type of use is allowed by special use permit, the idea being that, I think when they made the code, they decided things like grocery or, certain types of uses would be allowed, but ones they hadn't thought of would have to be by special use permit from the planning board. So the cannabis dispensary needs a special use permit. And because the code says that special use permits need to be in accordance with a site plan. And so that's why we really need to have a site plan for the whole site, even though we don't need to approve the use of the farm store.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right, and like, please forgive us, like, we're working,
Yeah.
we wanna work with you as best as we
I'm just
can.
trying to scope out, like,
You know.
what are we actually
Yeah.
considering?
May I ask, when you say site plan, you mean of the interior of the building?
No, that's the exterior.
Okay,
Like
so,
It's that
Entire
checklist
site.
of things that are required for that one.
This one.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so a lot of the things you had checked off NA, but they are applicable because we need a site plan, not just the special use permit.
Right, so I guess maybe while we're here today, based on all of the plans that we've submitted so far, I think there are very few items that we do not have on the official site plan, so I just want to make sure that we can get a clear answer of what else we would need to be providing to get the
To
special
make
use
it a
permit.
full
And-
site plan for you.
You know, just coming from our position, I want it to be stated that, you know, we are tenants of the building. We are not the building owners, we're the occupants. And, you know, we obviously are dealing with a situation where a business has been operating within the village limits for many decades without an existing site plan. So, you know, we want to work with you to bring this site up to an acceptable standard for the planning board. So if there's anything that you see from our current site plan as proposed that we would, you'd like to see added for the.
I'm not sure we have the qualifications to give you that
Right.
information.
Right.
I would direct you to the municipal code
I
enforcement.
could tell you the things that Alex asked for previously, which many of them are answered on that one. one I just.
Yeah, we made sure to, he had sent us an email with a list designating for the outlines of the parking spot, the bike rack, the dumpster, the handicap, the loading zone, and the sign. And those were his last requests to us. So yeah.
So, I mean, there are 64 points, and so I'm not gonna be able to cross-reference.
Yeah.
Thanks, Terry, I think that's right. If Alex, whose job it is to do that cross-reference, has only identified those, then that would be the right place to start. But I think once you've concluded the ones that Alex has mentioned on the list, if you have that list.
Which, yes, we have and submitted.
Then I would say that we would have Alex give one more review, because we're seeing this in pieces. So if you can complete those pieces, we can give it one more review. You know, property boundary lines and dimensions clearly labeled is the third one. I don't see a plan. Does that one have that?
This would be,
With
this is the,
setbacks and property, and that's the survey?
this is the survey. We provided you guys 3 copies of this.
Okay, so this is that,
So that's the survey.
that's the newest submission.
No,
Well,
this has been submitted, this was submitted before the deadline for the meeting. And then we had an engineer do another layer, sorry for the small copy. This is the parking lot detail.
And the sculpture park detail,
Right.
for our desire to add gardens.
So one example of this, to answer the question of, we need to be considering this as a single, as multiple uses for a single property or site plan. So, there would usually be a table that would indicate the parking requirement
Mhm.
for each of the businesses and combined, and then that the number of parking spots that you've indicated satisfies that? Is that
And we
table?
did, so this is actually our second time submitting that.
Where
we
is
submitted-
that?
Yes. So we had an engineer originally submit, and I think that's where we said without the survey completed, we wouldn't be able to add that additional information.
Personally. But you're not planning to modify the building or the parking lot?
We have no intention
We,
to.
no, we, especially as renters, we are making aesthetic updates. We are making. I like the removal of the butterflies. We're making aesthetic updates. We're adding a lot more order to the parking lot, because there's just currently no perimeter of the parking lot, really designation other than from gravel to grass. We're adding signage designating with each planter that we're putting in order to do the perimeter of the parking lot, as well as proper signs for crossing. But you're not gonna, it's not gonna get paved in any way, and there's no
No.
grass, the little green overflow, there's people just gonna be people parking on the grass. Well, we will have planters as well as car stops to ensure where that car is meant to park. Because it looks, I mean. I don't,
I mean, we're essentially using the parking lot
Yes.
as it has been used, and I know that we reviewed the calculations with Alex, and we have
Right.
adequate parking for both businesses, employees and tenants.
Is that in
Is that somewhere in a
Needs to be on
table?
one of these maps in a table, the way that.
Got it, got it. I have like, I kind of have a scribble.
let's just put it on.
Yeah, I
just
have a
needs to be in the-
scribbled, I'm sorry for the scribbled copy,
The
but
parking
this
lot
was
isn't
the
expanding
original.
At all into the
parking.
grass.
No.
No,
Hill
there between the parking lot and
First
the rail
and,
trail.
yeah,
And
and that's
That's
actually,
not gonna get.
no,
encroached
that
on.
hill section is actually, once
That's
you
town
hit that,
property.
that becomes village property, that actually is not, yeah.
So anywhere that is existing grass, we're only looking to add the implementation of gardens, and that is actually mostly to do with forcing pedestrian traffic back to the rail trail street crossing. So by adding the planters of the parking lot along with garden beds in that street corner, you have no exit in that corner anymore. And instead they would either have to go back towards the rail trail to cross over, because one of the biggest things we see with this property is that corner of Water Street and Main Street. People see the rock, corner and they cross diagonally. And so needing the ability to even cross there was why we want to add the gardens.
Okay. So I think what we would have to see is this parking information that you have here, in a traditional parking table that we would see on a site plan.
Sure.
And once it's there, we can assess, because what it's telling us is that the farm store and the dispensary combined would only require 4 parking spots based on the square footage, which is 1 per 100 square feet. But I want to check that against the code, because it seems pretty unlikely that you could operate those 2 businesses.
Yeah, we absolutely
With
agree.
four
And
parking
we have room for more
Absolutely.
than
Right.
just.
Oh, yeah, and the farm
So-
store has been designated that, the Alex, designated as only 8 people at the max can enter the farm store. The dispensary is not much larger square
Yeah.
footage than the farm store.
Yeah.
We don't expect there to be an allowance of that many more people in there.
But recognize that even if they were up to 8 people for each destination, having 4 parking spots is not a likely adequate allocation. So we just want to figure out whether that's the right way to approach this calculation for 2 distinct businesses, because what I see is you're combining the square footage, and I just don't know if that's the code, but that's why we asked for it to be done in a parking table in accordance to the code.
Mhm.
So let's please ask you to do that.
Sure.
And thank you for, delineating some more specificity as to where the parking spaces will be, and that seems like it's laid out.
And we really wanted to work as best as we could, to not have to do any grading, leveling, removing of, gravel, or having to add pavement.
Yeah.
We'd like to keep.
Again, we're renters, so
Right.
doing something of that magnitude would
severely impact
Yeah,
our-
we're small farmers, so that is not something I think that's even within the bandwidth of our.
I have a procedural question again, like, as a site plan, and apologies, I'm very new to this, but as a site plan with the parking, what level of detail do we need to know about the traffic?
Yeah.
On the site plan in the first.
You mean
instance?
pedestrian or car or?
No, I mean vehicle, just because
Vehicle.
that's a horrific intersection as it is.
Yeah.
And, given the use case here, that's gonna be a big concern, so I'm just trying to figure out where that needs to be addressed and trying to help you get everything you need to address in the next instance rather than back and forth.
Yeah, and I definitely would just love to bring to the board's attention that we have not been open and we have occupied the space since January, and that parking lot is filled with over 20 parking spots every single weekend from Friday to Sunday night. And in a different configuration every week. So what we really want to be able to do is start to bring order to this parking lot.
The longer this goes on,
Yeah,
I think
and-
the more
and
the town and the
really-
village are gonna start to see that, it's gonna get unruly over the summer. We witnessed a Tesla parked horizontally across the driveway,
Yeah.
and leave the vehicle there.
A couple things. Let's get some linearity to our meeting here. One is, that's more than a procedural question. I think that's a question that this board has to discuss, which is something that is in alignment with prior discussions around the unique special use of a dispensary and whether we want to evaluate traffic impact, in particular in a location that already has some traffic considerations.
And
I
is
think
it
we wanna-
specific to the traffic, or is it, essentially we're trying to, if we would like to use the parking lot as it has been used by the previous business occupant.
We
Right,
do not
but that's-
foresee that, we do not foresee being able to take customers more than the previous business that operated there.
But there's a lot of references to the previous business that operated there. There's also references to you being tenants and not owners. But those are, we appreciate you sharing that, but they're not necessarily considerations that impact what our review consists of.
No,
Our
yeah.
review is considering a new site plan for a new use, and it's a distinct use from the prior use.
Sure,
And even the idea that like the community members or visitors park in your lot, that's a private commercial consideration of your own as tenants or owners, that you'll have to figure out a procedure, you know, like an operating procedure to prevent that from happening if that's important to your business. But it's not really something that we are gonna enforce or take into account. What we're gonna take into account is the parking you need. And then you'll have to figure out how that parking is exclusively yours for the use you have.
Totally.
Because,
I think the point that I'm trying to raise is that, you know, it's one of the more larger private lots in the village. And so, again, understanding that we are a micro business, and so our dispensary is very different from the other dispensary that's currently open in New Paltz. We don't have the ability to purchase a slew of other brands and stock our shelves with as many products as another dispensary would do. We don't have the ability to do this to deliveries there. What we have the ability to do is grow and produce our own products. So this store is very specified to what we do, and the clientele list will, you know, the customer base will follow that, but we aren't going to be as busy as a regular dispensary. And I just want the board to consider just as a regular business and maybe not honing too sharply on the fact of the word dispensary, because it is only what we can produce and sell ourselves. So,
thanks
Yeah.
for that. And, you know, I think given that this is, I think, the fourth or fifth dispensary application that we've seen here, not all of them have opened to become that, but I think we're thoughtful about the type of business it is, and also thoughtful about consistency and equity among the other applicants that we've reviewed for similar purposes. And so that square footage question, the square footage question is actually the big driver in our code of what parking you'd require and how many people might be in attendance. So that's the basis of the parking requirement, that the usage that you're describing could inform the traffic impact. Keeping in mind that may be your business model, but it might not prevent more people than your business model is intended to serve from arriving at your dispensary, looking for parking, trying to make a left turn off 299 onto Water Street, you know, all the things that create traffic or crossing the rail trail while pedestrians and bicyclists are accessing the rail trail. So I know that it's your business intent, but what we have to do is foresee the potential impact in that particular neighborhood that is experiencing already a lot of congestion and traffic, and the addition of a hotel, you know, in a short amount of time. So we need to have a real accurate parking assessment based on the use and its combined purpose. We need to have the site plan add all the elements that Alex indicated are missing, and then we can take.
those have been added
Those
and
were added.
submitted.
Well, where is this site? I'm seeing all I see is a plat survey, a survey plat.
Right, and then you
And
should
then,
have
and engineers,
engineers. Looks like this one.
and this was also submitted.
I think, and then, as far as our experience, I think that we maybe overestimated the amount of traffic that was gonna be at the dispensary that did open. Because I've heard that it's not that busy and that there's not a lot of traffic, and
It's good to have the experience of
Yeah,
one
so
that's.
because everyone was afraid, oh my God, everyone's gonna go to the dispensary, but they're wrong. I mean,
And-
it doesn't seem like it panned out the way we thought it would.
Yeah, no, and I think, you know, maybe that's something the board considers. I'm just also trying to understand how we scope this and multi-use space with, residential plus, farm stand plus dispensary. What it means to be in this particular place in the village with the egress that you have and don't have. Like I said, I know that's a horrific intersection because I'm there every single day and I try to avoid it as soon as that
Yeah.
possible. So a
We
separate
want
apart
to
from-
make that corner safer.
Yeah,
We
I agree.
do a lot
As I said,
of
sculpture
traffic
garden,
development.
Parking lot, plans are schematic.
Mhm.
It doesn't reference site plan anywhere.
Is, do I,
So,
the words site plan, or I know the checklist of 64 items plus the header site plan, that is
Is that
we're looking
what
for?
we just have?
As I said, I'm not the professional.
Right, right, right.
You're gonna have like professional to do this.
one thing that I think, I just want to say for the record is, we have to make sure that before an application is in front of this board, that we're confident that it has all the elements of a site plan that we would need to consider. Because it's not the first time fairly recently that we've been here and we're sort of seeing things piecemeal. And I think it's probably challenging for the applicant. And I know it's challenging for us, because we're able to opine on something, but then realizing that there's several pieces that still are missing. So there's times when that happens for some things, or you learn more and then you need more. But I think that what we really want to do is get really good at making sure that this board is seeing a complete site application or site plan. And I'll be honest, and I just don't see all the things that we need to understand the combined use of this property, the impact that'll have on parking. We haven't yet requested a study of the impact on traffic, but I think we need to make sure we discuss that. And any other considerations about like the sculpture garden, the planting schematic, just doesn't meet the criteria for us to be able to review it like a site plan against the Gateway District
And
guidelines.
right, and forgive us, we were, under the premise that, we have gotten this far, we're in front of the planning board for the second time. According to the email correspondences back and forth with the building inspector and with the secretary, to get in front of the planning board.
Yep.
To us, as the applicant says, we have submitted a plan that is suitable for review.
Yeah,
So understood.
Yeah, I think we share frustrations on that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I'm frustrated, but I am saying I'm highlighting the fact that like, we gotta try to make sure plans are clear and complete. And then we'll be able to look at things in a lot more thoughtful.
so should
way.
we reach out to Alex again and ask for what the board feel is missing, or I'm not? Because we have, the schematic
checklist
is
is-
done by a licensed landscape architect. Or engineering, whatever he is.
So landscape architect.
Yes. So is that not an adequate professional? For that portion?
I'm not sure,
I'm not sure.
because I'm seeing it in different files, and I'm still trying to figure out which of the.
I
most
think
current.
part of it is that what the chair is saying is that we need to get everything, right now, there's multiple documents, it's this document has this one has this one has this. I think what you probably need to do is get someone who can take all those pieces, put them in one place, and then look, just verify against the checklist, but I think some of the difficulty is the fact that it's scattered over various places.
Yeah,
Right, and I think that,
And
we're,
that's just my sort of guess as to what the issue is. I know Alex brought it to me at one point, and I was the one who said to him, the email you got, I said, these are the things that I see missing. Kind of off the top of my head, but I didn't check it against the checklist.
right,
So, because I assumed that had already been done. So I'm gonna get him tomorrow and we'll.
just as an example that is presenting as confusing, so the schematic, the thing titled survey plat, but is actually your landscape and parking
Mhm,
engineering overlaid on the survey plat
mhm.
actually has a different parking configuration than this.
So this
Yes,
was,
it does,
yes,
'cause-
so this was the first parking lot with the
Right.
first engineer, and then we moved to the architect. And we decided that excessive parking was not needed, and that was also on grass area. I don't ever want to deter from green.
Right,
space.
so what we're looking for is one integrated way to assess the plan. And so when this one says total required space is 12 and says it's a
So I
certain
can
number.
get those
this is-
details onto the.
That
onto
is our most
parking
final
lot schematic.
piece that Terry has.
And I will touch base with Alex
Yeah.
and just verify the items, because the only things that I have on my checklist that weren't information that we provided to the board over the past submissions were the drainage calculations for the stormwater runoff and the erosion and sediment control plan. But we're sort of asking for a waiver from that because we do not intend to do new construction. We will not be paving any surfaces, and we do not want to change any grading of the parking lot or similar.
Isn't
Can
the
I
parking
just-
lot currently gravel?
Yes.
How do you stop the runoff from gravel parking?
So, to my understanding, I believe the village put in a stormwater drain several years ago because there used to be a problem there. So there's a stormwater drain at the
Entrance.
base of the catch basin, and you'll see on the survey plat, the catch basin typical that's in the middle of Water Street coming out of the Shale parking lot. So the catch basin is sort of like a gravel funnel, and it all goes into the street. There's a storm drain, and it comes out on the other side of our property in the hillside and moving into the Wallkill River. And that's detailed on our plan.
So then
I'm not an
DPW,
engineer,
I know, me neither.
but it's never a good idea to drain a gravel parking lot into a catch basin. The gravel goes in the catch basin. It clogs the catch basin.
I can completely understand that.
yeah, so that's why we
Just
would
saying.
ask for that engineering and not allow a waiver of it.
Okay.
And can I just, a procedural point, you have this checklist and you said there were several that were checked NA. Did you, they were checked not applicable, who?
I'm sorry,
did that check?
I don't
We
actually know where that
didn't,
is.
we don't have any, and.
Okay.
No one
Yeah.
sent me
Yeah.
an NA
So-
of anything.
So that list of 64 you say is in different pieces somewhere. There's nothing there that you would say would be not applicable.
Yeah, and
That's
I
yeah.
can verify that with Alex and just make
Yeah.
sure that, the detail, because again, I'm not an engineer. but, the detail of the stormwater drain, does that suffice as a erosion sediment control plan, or we'll have to go back to a professional to get something a little bit more detailed?
And the site plan checklist you're looking at was the demonstration of the checklist. It wasn't like they checked.
Okay,
Oh.
It was-
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, I was like, I never submitted
yeah,
this.
we did like NA ourselves, yeah.
Okay, that was what I was trying to figure out, like,
No.
do we have a
But-
disconnect of
No.
things that you thought were not applicable and
No.
Yeah.
should be applicable and vice versa?
Right, so, but I do think, and I appreciate you referencing Alex had a limited number of things. I think that we just want to double back and confirm that.
Okay.
This is the first.
And another thing, and maybe it wasn't explained, which I started to explain earlier when you referred to the prior use of the building. There are often things that are required to be changed when the use by a new occupant for new purposes happens to a building. And there are some things that don't need to be changed, and the code usually dictates what those are and are not. And so what we're gonna try to do is make it possible for you to use the building the way you want to use it. But also by virtue of the code, not our discretion, but by virtue of the code, we're also going to make sure that there's explanations of things that have the potential to provide risk, that there is mitigation of impact and things like that. That may or may not have been in the case when the building was in its prior use, but will be the case in moving forward.
And just on that subject, did the board have a chance to review our submission for an operating plan and security plan?
No, because that's usually a little bit further down the road.
Okay.
Um,
They're in the folder.
but they're in
And
there.
I believe the.
I say no, meaning I didn't review,
Right.
not yet.
I believe the security plan summary is fairly detailed and I want, it's something that summarizes the security. For obvious reasons, we cannot disclose to the public the full details of our security plan. There are restricted areas because we're dealing with, cannabis.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that, if there's anything that the planning board notices about the security plan, we don't plan to have an ATM on site. We've taken a lot of measures to reduce the risk. As per our insurance, we're required to keep a limited percentage of our inventory on site at all times. And I think some of these details could be really relevant to the board helping make a decision.
Okay. So please take a look at the permit checklist and also please take a look at the design standards for the Gateway District.
Correct.
Because those are gonna be the two guidelines that are gonna help you bring.
Design as in,
There's a whole section of the code that is specific to the Gateway District.
yes,
And
we met with the historical,
so the Historical
Well,
Preservation
then,
Committee,
yeah.
we go through the process with them,
Yep.
get the signs approved and the
yeah,
lighting.
which we have, and we have,
Great.
and the paint colors as
Yeah,
well.
so the Gateway District, sometimes they apply, sometimes they don't. It might be the
Yeah.
location of parking relative to the building. There might be bike racks. Like, I don't think. I've
Yeah, and we
seen-
did actually,
We have a
Alex
bike rack
requested.
in
Now those are
plan.
added.
It was part of an original discussion that we had, and we'd absolutely like to encourage bicycle traffic.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Especially in light of the proximity to the rail trail, that.
No doubt.
Yes.
Yeah, so there.
It will, however, be private bike rack parking. Just
Well,
noting that.
It's, that's ours,
For our
that's our
customers.
deal, no, it's whatever they. can
Yeah, I
figure
don't
out.
know if that's gonna work. but-
Yeah.
So how many bike rack spots would we be needed to provide?
I'm not sure but I don't think there's a required minimum for according to the code. I think it doesn't
But
matter.
there may be, so I recommend you look at the code.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. I think that,
We thought we had, so we will go back and talk with
Yeah.
Alex again, because he provided us a list and we submitted that completed list, so we will go back and talk with him again.
okay.
So,
Could I ask a question? I'm not a board member, but this has come up a couple times about this pedestrian crossing.
mhm.
Can you just explain what you mean by like, how, you said you were trying to
Yes.
route the pedestrians a certain way and I
Yes.
just didn't follow that.
Sure, this is actually, that's the one. that
Because
we
there's
would
no designated crosswalk.
No,
No, right.
no, however, currently, the way that the space is that it is a large open space. And
Along Main Street.
that sight line from the rail trail, I think, is what mostly causes that incorrect crossing. So even though the village has put in a crosswalk over here, where the rail trail is, many people will cut through and cross straight here.
So you're talking about people crossing Main Street, not crossing Water Street.
No.
They
No,
cross diagonally.
They cross diagonally at the corner of Water and Main to this corner where that rock sculpture viewpoint is.
So you're trying to improve that situation, but.
We're, yeah, by,
I just wanna make sure we haven't yet addressed the crossing of Water Street, right? How people would.
No, and it's currently, there's no crosswalk there, and I don't believe there's even any signage there. And I think that goes to just how we're going to assess the pedestrian and traffic impact of the use of this building to start to consider whether safety measures have to be put in place that would prevent the increased use of this building, or at least now the documented use of this building and the code compliant use of this building
mhm.
will affect pedestrian and vehicle traffic and therefore impact of that. So and part of that impact would be, is there a safe place for people to cross
That's
from
what
your
we're trying
parking
to
lot
create.
to your
Yeah.
front door without even the current traffic, let alone increased traffic.
So those implementations of that large planting in that corner, which is right here, as well as all these planters that will corner it off. This will force anyone in the parking lot to have to cross at that edge of that driveway, which sets you back in a sight line more than 30 feet. That particular turn from the bridge right is probably one of the worser sight lines, and then that left to the
From Main
bridge
Street to Water Street.
is also really bad. So we're trying to force the crossing of that to the establishment further back into the Water Street.
Yeah.
And honestly, if we had to, we would push it back to where the existing
Yeah.
So
crossing
these
is.
are great examples of why I'm gonna recommend that we have a traffic study for this project. Because we certainly have learned something about the potential for volume of traffic and around dispensaries that may have allayed some of our thoughts about the volume of traffic impact. But I think that as we look at the number of complexities of this intersection, and what you're explaining may make perfect sense. But traffic engineers are usually who help us confirm that what you're explaining makes
Right.
perfect sense,
Yeah.
and it's gonna create more safety. And then a traffic study would be what the Ulster County Planning Board or our own DPW, depending on the location, would be able to use as the basis for whether it would need to do something different, like recommend a crosswalk or recommend a limited left turn, or some of the things that happen when they get to see a traffic impact and study. So while we're very thoughtful about what we require of applicants, especially applicants as you described that are looking to start a small business, I feel like there's some engineering that we need advice on, and the only way to do that would be with something that explains how this property is going to be, how the traffic will move, pedestrian and auto traffic will move about the property, and what we believe the volume of traffic driven to the location for its multiple uses will affect the intersections in that neighborhood.
So would the village recommend us to the Ulster County DPW, or would we find a private traffic study?
No, we would ask the applicant for a traffic study. There have been others in the community, so there's probably existing data that you could refer to as a basis for some of the assumptions you make.
Mhm.
But we would ask for a traffic study from the applicant. Then we have a traffic engineer that would review that traffic study. And traffic is a bit of a misnomer, because just keep in mind, it includes pedestrian safety, bicycling safety, connection to the rail trail, these big questions, sight lines, parking.
Parking issues, loading, unloading.
Right, loading and unloading is another, question I had about this application.
So our loading is designated, and our loading can only happen in completely off hours.
For the special use that we're here to talk about.
Yes.
So that's a great example. If that's for both uses, then that's a great example of something that would be written into the procedure, would be captured in the resolution. So these
We
are,
did submit a breakdown of usage plan, an operating plan.
okay,
That kind of
Yeah.
details the different businesses.
Our
that
hours
operate.
of operation, our allowance of how many people
Loading and
can come in, our
unloading.
loading, unloading, our handicap designation, yeah.
so we'll all take a closer look at that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I have to say, this is the first I've not been on the board that long, but this is the first application where I've seen in a commercial property where parking is across the street. So I'm at a loss.
Right, and-
of even how to review this thing.
We reviewed the code and it says that we should put it behind the building.
Yeah, but that's-
So,
Yeah.
unless you want us to put it
That's
in
the river.
No, that's not my point. My point is, for me, this is the first time I'm experiencing this kind of thing, so I need a professional to tell me that we're making the right decisions here.
But the bank is doing that.
Yes.
The Wachovia,
The Wells Fargo
tenants
has
of the
both.
of the
It has both.
Wells Fargo, that's right. Right, but their plan, for parking is to include the parking across the street in that lot by Rock and Snow, so that's very close, maybe.
May I ask the board, how does a Gateway District business operate if there is no ability to create parking on where the building exists? Because that is a particular corner and it's a standalone establishment with no ability.
Yeah, we're not saying that you can't have parking
No,
across the
yeah,
street.
I
We're
guess.
just saying we want to understand
So-
the safety and
Yeah.
impact to pedestrian, bicycling and other auto traffic of having it that way.
And if,
Given that there's no prior approval of the way that works. To answer your other question, which I think was your other question, if a business proposes use and doesn't have any parking,
Right.
then they have to justify the idea that street parking or other public parking is adequate for their use. You were proposing parking, you're even proposing parking that you believe would be adequate, and we'll confirm that once we look at a parking table that confirms the uses and their unique needs. But what we want to know is whether the way it's set up is safe for autos, pedestrians and bicyclists to both visiting your business and not visiting your business.
Right.
Right.
Because that's what our responsibility is ultimately assess the impact on communities and immediate vicinities. And I think we have a more heightened awareness when we know that a community, a segment of the community already has safety and traffic issues. And one of the things the traffic engineers will do is they'll consider future development proposed for that area, which, for example, is a 28-room hotel that's currently approved down the
Right.
street, and the impact that that's already going to have on traffic, as well as, of course,
And we can reference the study that was done on the rail trail too, and try to kind of bring the whole thing into a cohesive document like that.
Yeah. So we've kind of been moving around, but I think we've moved it forward by moving around.
Yeah.
I want to just admit that I've heard you say that, we thought we kind of met all the requirements, but maybe we didn't. And I understand this isn't gone as perfectly as it could. But we will get there together, and it might take a meeting or two more than you expected, but it's not uncommon for a business like this, in a location like this, to take more than a few meetings. We do have a couple other procedural things. One is we have to set an escrow.
We did.
We already have done that,
Okay,
and
So,
submitted. the
there's-
payment.
so I don't have a record of what the current escrow level is. Mike, are you able to check on that?
Check it.
It's 1,500 is the current escrow amount.
Yes.
So if we're gonna have the potential, the drainage and the stormwater might be done by internal or might need an engineer to look at your calculations and assumptions. The traffic would definitely need our traffic engineer to look at it. So that's where sometimes we ask for escrow to be increased in order to cover consultant fees that we might incur. We meaning the village, of course.
Just to confirm, it is the 1,500.
So it's currently at 1,500. If it's anticipated that we would have a new study, Mike, do you know what, and I don't have those levels memorized, you know what we would be?
No, I would have to check. I'm just not familiar enough with it, but,
Okay,
you could start with that and obviously,
well, the 15 is already in place.
yeah.
And, all right, so what I would say is that in our next meeting, when we refer any of the work you're going to be doing to another engineer, we might need to increase the escrow to make sure that that amount on hand is covering that
And would you let us know before the meeting or after the meeting?
at the meeting.
Okay.
My proposal, I look for a motion to classify this as a seeker type 2 application.
So moved.
Second, Terry?
All in favor?
Aye.
That means it doesn't need any additional environmental
Who
review.
made the original motion?
Rachel?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know you had a couple questions, Nikki. Is all of it, you think, integrated into the feedback we've given?
Yeah, I think I understand the scope and I appreciate the patience with the parking and what we're gonna need on traffic and understanding. As I second Rich's, I understand frustration with the stop and start, but it's the way it goes.
Yeah, we want to come prepared, so we want to make sure that the list is checked just
All
as
right,
much.
great. So
So
let's make sure the next time you're here, it's with the application, with the plan complete. I know you had a couple things, Terry. You feel like we have direction?
We're good?
Rachel,
We're
good? Okay,
thank you.
all right, so thank you both.
Just the
and-
point too, eventually, when you believe you have a completed application, because of the location, this will require referral from county.
It will, and we probably should hold that
You
referral.
can hold until you have a complete application. absolutely.
So complete application.
Down the road, it will have to be.
When the application is sufficiently complete according to
With
this
the
board,
vehicles,
we'll
the
refer
traffic
it to
study.
the Ulster County Planning Board.
So completed site plan, vehicle study submitted to you. Village engineers would have to review it and then it would go to the county, right?
Yeah, we might send it to the county planning board simultaneous with our traffic engineers looking at your traffic plans.
Okay,
Are they gonna need like some sort of public hearing or something pre or post?
They will, we're gonna hold on that until we get some more. They'll
is that
definitely,
because of the traffic study or because of
No,
the?
everything.
every application would get a public hearing, but we usually wait till the application is substantially complete before setting the public hearing, because we want the public to have all the information they need to make comments.
Absolutely. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you both. Excuse me. Okay. So we're moving on. I remember New Paltz Apartments has a different, oh yeah. So moving on to PB 21AX. Amy. Welcome back. And PB 21AX is the what's currently known as New Paltz Apartments. We can talk just a moment about what that just be reminded what that project is. And then talk about how we're going to use the time. And my suggestion is that we sort of limit ourselves to about 30 minutes, because that seems like plenty of time, although there are a lot of things to discuss here. So, and Emily, I would not feel insulted if you interrupt me at any point and correct or add to what I'm sharing. But where we are with New Paltz Apartments, which is a many-unit development that is currently located in property that is known as the town of New Paltz, contemplating to be annexed to the village of New Paltz at some point in this procedure. Where we are currently is that we are in possession of a draft of a final environmental impact statement, or FEIS. That draft was prepared by the applicant's engineers and consultants, but ultimately this draft is the document that this board has to complete and represent to the community, and in consideration of all of the comments and questions that came to us from the community that are being responded to in this FEIS. And so what we decided we would do today, I'll first leave a moment for any questions, but I just want to explain what we decided we would do today is that we would all take, have the opportunity to review the FEIS in its current draft. And without the applicant present, we would identify areas that we believe require additional clarification or additional explanation, and or even that we know are going to be topics to be addressed with the applicant. But without the applicant present, I want to discourage us from getting too far down the conversation of an argument with ourselves about things that we know really require discussion with the applicant. But if we identify them, then we're going to have a complete list of things that they can either change or improve or clarify, and or what we'll want to address with this.
As a point of order, keep it to a half hour. And do you wanna? I'm happy to go last. If everybody has comments, go down the row, and then maybe you wouldn't be duplicative. If people had.
If anyone needs a printed hard copy, they did drop off one for every person, so I'm happy to get them if you like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Separate from this?
No, that's just an extra copy.
I just want to clarify also, I think that the planner Zena is observing by Zoom, and maybe other members of the team, so they are, or they may listen in after, but they did want to listen, but come join us at a future meeting.
Okay, great. So, yes, Nikki, some order to the way we move through this, and I was just estimating that we spend a half hour on it. I think we all have them. Thanks. But we could we could go person by person to briefly share their items. That would mean that if someone shares an item that overlaps with something you would have shared, please pull that out of your share so that we can only share additional comments. And if you share an item and someone has something to build on it or respond to it, then we can feel free to do that so that it'll be kind of some combination of order of people and topical. and Mike, you'll be capturing the salient points
Yes.
so that we can have kind of an agenda that would drive our conversation when we invite the applicant, which would probably be as early as the next week.
Could I make one clarification?
Yeah.
So this document includes, the comments and responses to comments that the applicant has drafted. And they've also put together a new, what they're calling the FEIS plan, which is a revised plan that they propose mitigates a lot of the impacts that were identified. But our comments can be on anything in here, but they can also be any necessary corrections or revisions to the DEIS, which was the original document, which
Yeah.
is too big to carry.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Emily. All right, Terry, would you like to begin?
Sure. Certainly one of the comments that I heard over and over again from the public and from all of you and from other people was the issue of affordable housing. As chairman of the Affordable Housing Board here in the Village of New Paltz. Let me just start with that. The Affordable Housing Board had a very, very good meeting, I felt. I think the board also felt with the developer. Their property manager was also on the call. We all, in my opinion, came away with a different opinion of how the project would actually operate. All of us on the board were wondering how would this quote student housing project and affordable housing units come together as one community. We were assured by the property managers, which is a very large company, by the way, out of Atlanta, Georgia. They have projects here in New York State, so it's not like they do nothing in our state. They have a project in Troy, New York. They have projects in Syracuse, Rochester. Basically, these are all multi-family projects. Some are based on college campuses, some are not. The issue of affordable housing in these projects seemed to me, and I think the board, absolutely seamless. They felt they could integrate this right into the project. I came away with confidence that the property manager would work along with the local affordable housing board. And they seem to understand the board's role. We seem to understand their role as managers. So all in all, I thought it was a very good meeting. That said, I think it would behoove us, and I think for the general public of this village, that if, as we produce our final environmental impact statement, we remove the word student housing and just call it multifamily housing. It will be multifamily housing. Even their own professionals, the developer's own professionals, put it in the FEIS that there is opinions, case law, I'm not sure, in New York State. Their words almost exactly are that a group of students living in an apartment rented by the bedroom, sharing common space such as kitchens and living rooms, had been defined as a family household. So I think the whole thing about this being a student housing project has given the public the wrong idea. Anybody in New Paltz could rent apartments there. The developer presented that to us. Anybody can. So let's call it what it is. It's multi-family housing. Some will be affordable, some won't. Some will be students, some won't. I think it's going to make it clearer to everybody what this project is. So that said, my substantive comment is that we eliminate the word student housing, call it multifamily housing. Getting into the weeds a little bit about affordable housing, there's a great deal of detail in here about the number of apartments, 1-bedroom apartments, 2-bedroom apartments, 4-bedroom apartments. I would recommend that we leave that part out at this point. I think that's for a discussion down the road by the planning board. As we look at the site plan, remember, we're only looking at the environmental impact statement. We don't need to get into the weeds about drainage calculations, parking calculations at this point. We're gonna do that down the road. Correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Attorney. I think I'm right about this. So I would recommend we leave that out. The reason I say that is I don't know that definitively what the waiting list for affordable housing units are right now in the village. I know there's about 100 families. I know there's no students on that. Are they one-person families, three-person families, families with young children, families with grown children? I don't know. All of that dictates what apartment people are going to be able to live in and would desire to live in. So I would recommend we take that detail out and just say it'll be determined down the road when we do the site plan. I would also go so far as to say, I think this form of housing, which may include a great number of students, as time goes on into the next 5 years and 10 years, I think we all know there's going to be less and less and less students. All you have to do is look at how many colleges are closing their doors in this country every single week. The population of college students is going down. I predict the future of this project is going to change, and it's going to change from less students, more families. That's going to, so therefore, the configuration of the affordable housing units, wouldn't it be great if we could build some flexibility into that? Flexibility such as, if we have a 2-bedroom apartment and we need 2 1-bedroom apartments, could we swap them? If we had 2 1-bedroom apartments and we needed a 2-bedroom apartment, could we swap them? I know that creates strain on the developers. I understand that. I'm looking at the strain because they're probably staring at me. I understand that's difficult to do what they call their pro formas. Okay, I think we can work it out. This is not magic, it's math. So let's try and be a little flexible with the affordable housing. But on the same side, I think as far as the housing authority, the Affordable Housing Board is concerned, we are much more confident that we can work with this project now than we were 6 months ago, and we look forward to it. That's my comment on affordable housing. I guess my last comment on all this is, frankly, I'm glad to see that it's smaller in terms of scope. Because as I said, the population that the developer is targeting is going down over the next 5 to 10 years. And it's not going down de minimisly. Shouldn't use terms like that.
That's a big word.
Terms.
That's a big word.
It's going to be dramatic. And it's going to impact the village of New Paltz. So with that said, I'm glad to see it smaller. And let me just, I guess I'm speaking a little too long here, like 30 minutes. I didn't get 30 minutes too long. Anyway, the one thing I'm still not quite sure about, there's enormous levels of detail in here. I mean, there's detail in here that goes down to 1/100th of an acre. And I've asked this question before and I'll ask it again. It's when this final plan is done, am I attesting to the accuracy of that plan?
What do you mean the accuracy?
What if they're wrong by 1/10 of an acre? What if they're wrong by an acre? All I have is their opinion about this. I have nothing definitive.
If there are things that we want our own technical experts to verify, we can refer to them.
Okay.
I mean, you're not personally liable for something, but you know, if
but we're gonna put
there
our
are
name on
things that we want, you know, checked, we should have them checked by our technical experts.
Okay. Well, certainly the one thing that I think we have to have reviewed by the city engineer are all their calculations of wastewater, and.
But again, that's the site plan do you think that's something that we would want additional information about in the environmental impact statement?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know.
Well, I'm sure you're saying additional information, but we would maybe want our engineer to check it, right? To check what's been presented. We did,
But are they gonna check it again? In other words, we're doing this. Eventually, we're gonna see a site plan. And again, we're gonna go through solid waste calculations. We're gonna go through wastewater calculations. We're gonna go through traffic calculations. Again,
yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just thinking this through. Our engineer did review the DEIS, right? And gave some comments on things that they needed more details on, and they got that. So unless there's something new, presented now, I don't know that we need to know. It's up to you. Okay, that would be the process. At this stage, we're looking for significant environmental impacts and mitigation measures for those.
Right.
And, we do need to do that at this stage.
Okay, no, I'm finished. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's okay.
a little longer than I should.
Rachel.
All right, I'll try to be quick. I listened to the meeting with the Affordable Housing Board. And I felt like I really learned a lot, because I think that for most people, and definitely for myself, that the process seems a little obscure. But basically, the Affordable Housing Board is entirely in control of who gets the apartments. All the developer does is say, we have these 5 apartments, they vet the people, they find the families, and they, as far as I can understand, also determine the price that they're going to be paying for it. So that whole situation, of course, that's completely antithetical to the idea of the student rental, because the purpose of the student rental is the higher price point of the student. So I would imagine that if there are students that are going to be living there or whatever, that the affordable housing wouldn't necessarily involve them as being students. They would have to happen to be a student who's in one of the families that's on the wait list, which is now 100, you say there are 100 families on the wait list. So even so, that if they're providing 10% of, it would be 10% of the entirety of the project. But that 10% would be going to families. It wouldn't be like the students were getting some kind of affordable housing out of this. And so to me, when I looked at this, I feel like also I haven't had really a chance to look it over as well as I'd like to. So the first thing I noticed was that they have hired, it seemed to me like a new management company that wasn't part of it before. Now there's a Peak Made Real Estate is the company they're going with. It's a huge corporation. They operate in the United States and Canada. They've got an enormous number of properties. They're managing over 85. And I looked at like some of the reviews, because I feel like as far as the impact on the community, the way that the property is managed is important. They have a C rating from Apartment Ratings. It looks like they've got some good places in like they've got an A for higher grades for one in Syracuse, but all over the country there's some that rate an F. Have really long list of complaints from the tenants. That being said, I haven't had a chance to look over all of their responses. The ones that I looked at seem somewhat cursory. And I'd like to be able to, go back to the original, in other words, to extend the dialogue back. In other words, there's, if there's a complaint about the map or whatever, they say, there's nothing wrong with the map. Then I'd like to go back to the person and say, hey, can you be more specific about what it was? Can you show me the difference between what you think should be here and what's actually there? And I thought that it was good that they reduced. We asked them for I thought at least a 50% reduction for some of the reasons that he stated, and also just the enormous amount of growth that 724 beds would, so they reduced it by 20% or about 20%, which is good. I wanted 50, but it's still, it's better. But I wouldn't, in looking at that, I wouldn't say, oh my God, they reduced it by so much, because the initial ask is so gigantic. That's sort of like, I guess, negotiating or whatever. I have I still have questions about, some of the materials they're using and I'm not, I want a more closer review of the environmental impact. And also to consider, with the town's request for an additional, wetland inspection.
So thanks,
The
Rachel.
the village environmental board also, supported that idea.
Right, so, which of the, so for example, just using the management company, do you think that they should disclose more information about the management company that, because you believe that has a significant environmental impact?
No, those two topics aren't exactly related. It's more of a community impact as opposed to the environmental impact. And I'm
So
just,
that's something that we can
yes.
get into this.
Yeah, I'd like to know, like this, you've got one company that's doing that's in charge of the construction and development. And you've got another company that's doing the management, and then you've got the owners. Are they gonna sell, or like, I'm just curious about that too.
Yeah, so
because-
that's probably not something
Yeah.
we'll ever be able to address, whether they plan to sell the buildings, but
or
what
the-
what we're trying to do is segment this into, what do we need to give them in terms of feedback to have a
Yeah.
complete FEIS?
Right,
Another thing I'm hearing about that from you is that, you want them to redo the wetlands assessment. There are multiple references to the wetlands assessment and the recency that those were completed.
Mhm.
Are you suggesting that those are not adequate?
I'd like to look at it further in order to, it
Cause
seems.
that's
to
a
me-
big,
Yeah.
that would be a big thing. If
Well,
they're-
I mean, it
They're
was
justifying it based on,
Right, it was something that was, I mean, the town EPB requested that the town wetland inspector also check it. So, and we went along with that, agreed with that, so at least that.
okay, so let's make sure that if that, I know there's several references to what was done to verify. If that's not one of the things that were done to verify, then we'd be asking for that to be
Yep.
included.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there was one other thing you said before the wetlands, that I want to make sure we capture, I'm sorry if I'm not recalling.
I just want to note,
Reduction in size?
it does say in here, the project sponsor is amenable to the town wetland inspector visiting prior to finalization. of the
Okay.
FEIS. So someone might just need to make that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I thought there was one other thing that I was trying to test whether that's something we need to ask them to update in here or whether it's.
I think it was the size that she was talking about.
Size.
Yeah, the sheer size.
Size and density, okay. Okay,
It's immense.
yeah, but we recognize that we have to be thoughtful about the fact that it's not necessarily adequate just to comment on it's big. We have to ask ourselves, is the environmental impact of its size adequately disclosed here? So how do you feel about that?
Well, I'm not in agreement that, it's a great idea to have, 5 more people in line at the state park on the weekends or, whatever. The amount of traffic, everything else. I think that the impact is, it's a gigantic impact all at once. And the county EPB is concerned about the sewage treatment plant. And, the entirety of all of the accumulation of all the different developments, impacting that. And it's not, whether it's not. When this first project first came up, there've been 4 more apartment buildings since then.
Yeah,
or
those are
several
okay.
more, and it
Alright.
just seems to me like I would be cautious before.
Well, I think we have to be more than cautious. The question I'm continuing to ask is, do we think the engineering implications of the building they're proposing are adequately explored in the document?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, so if you have any suggestions about what to add or who to refer that to, we will. You good, Rachel?
Okay.
Amy?
Okay, so my comments are slightly all over the place. I don't know how, but I did read through the entire thing. I have trouble sleeping at night, so this is really good reading for me.
You bet.
So my comments are slightly all over the place, and they're pretty quick. The first thing that really stuck out to me, page 56, this totally negates everything that you told me about affordable housing and this thing for families. they're telling us that they're only going to allow one person per bedroom. Now, I don't know any married couples or boyfriends and girlfriends that live together that are not gonna wanna sleep in the same room necessarily. Maybe some people do, some people don't. But in a family, usually adult couples cohabitate in a room. So when they say we're only gonna allow one person, this company only allows one person in a bedroom, that doesn't make any sense to me.
You're correct.
Okay,
So that should just be taken out.
so I just put that as my number one comment.
Yeah, interesting.
And that is about affordable housing as well, because I don't know any families that are gonna go for that.
Yeah,
that's a
no,
little weird.
Absolutely, right. That should just be removed.
And I don't get it. And I saw it 2 or 3 times mentioned.
Can I just mention though, I don't know if it's just a matter of taking it out, because that, it might affect the calculation.
That's why they said it was part of the calculation for the
Yeah.
affordable housing. It was part of the calculation for parking. So I'm just putting it out there. I'm not against it or for it or anything like that. I just don't think it makes sense.
Does not.
Okay. Number 2, they claim that they're gonna have 24-hour staff. Now, there's a very big difference between having a person sitting at a desk with a telephone that's staffed, and having security guards, having a nurse, having people there to help people who are there. For example, at the college, we have campus security. We have, a health office. We have certain amenities at campus to help. I'm not gonna call it control students because I believe they're adults and they don't need to be controlled, but they're there to help them. And they're there to kind of keep the peace and not bother the town police every time a small thing is happening. There's a campus police, there's a campus health officer, some people start throwing up. There's things going on there that help buffer this community to the greater community. So I'm curious if we could have some type of outline of what 24-hour staff, I'd like to see a definition for that. That's my number 2. So, and the top thing was more the security than the health office, although I don't think it would be a bad idea with this volume of people if there was some type of a nurse, maybe around sometime during the day and when one of the offices, I think it would be a great idea. Just my little input. 3. Oh, that's a health office. Okay, I'll just go to 4. Oh, 4. I see there's 1 bedrooms, there's 2 bedrooms. I'm not sure about 3 bedrooms, but there's 4 bedrooms. And just my personal experience in the village of New Paltz, I know this for sure. A lot of people want studios. They're affordable. They're easy, they're simple. Some of our population's transient. They don't move in for a long time. They just need a place to stay while they go to school. The studio's a good idea. We don't have enough. It's a place where people can have privacy. So I think, in my opinion, I'd like to see some studios integrated into the plan. Number 4, they say they're gonna have a shuttle to the college, a shuttle bus, and they're also gonna have bike path, which I think both are fantastic ideas. I am a big fan of shuttle buses. They cut down on traffic. It gives people without cars a means to get around affordably. I would like to see the shuttle expanded. I think this is something that this developer could do for our community. I don't have to go into my details of my ideas for that right now, but just to summarize, as long as they're gonna have a shuttle that goes to the college, let's have a shuttle that could drop people off in the village. And hey, if we wanna really do something nice for our community, let's let the shuttle drop people up up the mountain at one of these parks. Because we live in a beautiful place and we have no access if you don't have a car, and it's really, really sad. Okay, that's my comment to that.
But just as a point, the developer did offer that at the affordable housing.
He did?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm happy to hear that. I really like that a lot. 5, I am very, very curious. This is gonna be an R zoning, residential zoning, but we're being told there's gonna be amenities. So if there's amenities, if there's food being sold, if there's laundry being charged for, like a laundromat, I don't know. There's some kind of a gym that you have to belong to, I don't know. Like, I don't really know. So if there's gonna be some type of retail operations going on, do we need some other type of B2 zoning in there? I don't know. This is a question that we have to think about now before it gets too crazy with the zoning board. Is it really just residential? Or is it gonna be operating as like a mini village? Like, is it gonna be a little pizza place? Is there gonna be a laundromat? Like, we don't really know. Are there, you know, we don't have really, do we know if there are laundry machines in the units? I don't really know. I can't tell.
Yeah, sounds like.
Those are just some questions I had. Anyway, that's pretty much it to wrap it up for me. They're just things to think about. Oh, and one last thing, if you guys are watching, thank you so much that you decided that you're gonna do a model of this. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure the community is really, really looking forward to a live model that we could maybe set up. Maybe you could set up a table on the side of the room somewhere where people could stop by and view it if they want to. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Amy. It sounds like just on that last point, if there's no inclusion of any of those things that would be considered retail or other uses, then we should assume they're not there.
We were
The
told.
shuttle thing, I think, is a great, yeah, but amenities wouldn't be a pizza place. Amenities might be the pool and the laundry room or something like that.
Which is totally cool, and you don't need B2, but if the amenities are a coffee shop, then it's,
Right.
in some buildings, an amenity is a coffee shop.
Mhm. Okay, so we should make
Okay,
sure
in
there's.
some, there's a little grocery store in some amenities, that's considered an amenity in some of these buildings.
Okay.
I've been to some complexes where they have multiple buildings and they will have a little diner,
Okay,
okay?
so let's ask them to make sure that anything like that would be included in the application. The shuttle question is a great one. It's cool that it's already been discussed because it certainly has traffic implications, and that would definitely be an EIS question. So thanks, Amy. Nikki.
Thank you. And so I didn't get the benefit of being here for the hearings, but I did read through all the transcripts and, as a procedural point, to Terry's point, I just want to put one more finer point on that in terms of if we as the board own this document, which is then going to be kind of like almost biblical as it goes through the 25 different boards and committees and things that it has to. Who has the obligation to fact check this? And the reason I ask is because I'm very used to reading any sort of claim being substantiated by a citation. And there are lots of claims in here in response to, you know, unsubstantiated comments from the public, which were wonderful comments, but the response is, I don't really know where to find out. And so the question is, to Terry's point, like, what's our obligation to know that when we own this, how factually accurate it is? And how can we ensure that?
I don't have a great answer to that right this minute. It's a very good question. I think if there are things that are not substantiated, we should ask the applicant to cite a source, right? But it might be a lot of.
Well, my work, and it's a lot of work for an applicant. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to figure out what the different obligations
Yeah.
are, not create additional burdens.
I think the reason that the regulations state it, that it's our document, is to emphasize that we are able to. We can make the changes we see, the board can make the changes it sees fit. It doesn't have to persuade the applicant to do so. I don't think it's trying to make the board. I think that's the point of
The
that.
board's not the representative of all the facts
Exactly,
included here.
exactly.
Okay.
And it's just saying
I
that,
agree though,
yeah.
with Nikki, that if you see what is obvious speculation, I would think, I'm not putting my name on that. I would just cut it out.
Mhm.
I would remove it. And there's plenty of statements in there that are speculative. And I would definitely cross them out.
Or we could ask them to cite places where you think they should cite, and if they decide not to cite because they can't stand behind it, or they don't have something to substantiate it, then they remove it.
Let's strike it. Yeah.
So Nikki, that would be something that if you could just like circle and say these 6 places have references that are not.
600.
These 6 places have references that are not substantiated, we'd like to see backup.
Okay, I can do that. And would
That'd be great.
go to, I found it, the responses to be somewhat difficult to read. You know, in some cases, they were very tight and responsive. And then in other cases, they were a bit inconsistent or not quite clear how they were being responsive to the questions asked. Particularly with respect to the affordable housing and you know, I understand that the logistics and the specifics have to be owned by the Affordable Housing Board, but the way that the response is read, they, you know, there were many comments that said, we're trying to find out what the logistics of how are we going to understand what is affordable, how we're even gonna understand how eligibility work. To Amy, to your point, like you've got single bedroom leases, those kinds of things came up clear and consistent through all of the hearing. And the response was really, again, a little bit all over the place, but mostly will adhere to the law, like a generalized commitment to adhere to the law. Now, is that, you know, at this stage, a significant environmental impact on the mitigation effort? I'm not particularly sure. But so that sort of confusion was hard for me to follow what exactly the affordability component would be. And then my other comment is about EMS, which is inclusive of our volunteer fire department and our volunteer rescue squad, but also we have a number of different law enforcement agencies who cover this community, including SUNY, state police, local town police, sheriff, and I found the responses about minimal to no impact with this number of people to be quite not credible. I can't imagine, you know, that there's not going to be not just illnesses, but there are not going to be parties. There's not going to be needs for responses. And how do we fund that? And just as a community, we have a lot of volunteers who are already incredibly stretched thin. So that response felt very underwhelming.
Is it appropriate for us to ask the chief of police and the chief of fire to give us their written opinion of this?
In the next phase, for sure.
In the next.
I would say even now, though, because the planning board is acting as the lead agency on behalf of all agencies to look at impacts. So if you need input, you know, we've sent these documents to other agencies. We haven't gotten a lot of feedback, but if there are specific questions,
I think
it would be the time to ask. Yeah.
And my apologies to the rescue squad. I did not mean to leave you out. It should be all three.
Absolutely.
Who is the three? Police, rescue?
The
Fire.
police, fire, and
Okay.
the EMS.
That's a very good point.
Great, if we think that's appropriate for this stage.
Do you mind if I just interject here?
Yeah,
So
Mike.
all of those agencies that you just mentioned they're involved agencies in the seeker. They're certainly not interested, they're interested agencies. They're not involved because they don't get a permit, but they're interested agencies, and by all means, they would absolutely, their opinions and statements back to you would be very instrumental in doing this document.
We should have gotten them all.
Yeah, I mean, in the case law, boards are encouraged to reach out to any experts or other, you know, agencies they need to get those answers.
You know, and sometimes, you know, it matters who the letter comes from asking for the information.
Or if you ask for something specific versus just, what do you think of these documents?
Okay, well, I'm willing to draft up some thoughts about what I would like those three individuals to say.
That would be great.
And either the chair or I'd recommend our attorney sign that letter. I would like to recommend our attorney sign.
Because
These
that
are
might be.
busy people, I understand that, they're also volunteers, except for the chief
Not
of police.
all, yep.
But the other two, you know, there's volunteers involved here. And, you know, we need an answer.
You can invite them in here.
So the,
It's a little.
You can.
I think,
We've done
so,
that before.
so, and what the reason I asked if it's at this stage the right thing, because I'm also very thoughtful about the timeline we're on in terms of publishing this final EIS. And so we would have to both ask for that and ask for it on a deadline. Like a 30-day deadline max.
Maybe it could be based on facts of what our current level of responsiveness is and what our current staffing capabilities or something like that. You know, we have multiple other student housing and including campus.
Yeah, well, that's done in the DEIS. They did do some analysis of that. So what we'd be doing is asking them to verify the analysis and determine whether the impact of this project is adequately accounted for. And so that the three interested agencies would be great to reach out to. So let's draft, at least it's not specific questions, at least a prompt that says, here's the information we've been provided by the applicant. And these are things we'd like you to opine on as part of the FEIS.
Okay.
Well, if they require additional resources, which I can't imagine that they wouldn't, considering the size of the project. How would those resources be obtained? Would the applicant be required to provide some support for the fire department, police and rescue squad if the development is going to have such a significant impact?
Yeah, likely, but I think
Because
that's the second
taxpayers-
order conversation. That's the second.
Typically, those things are paid for through the property tax.
Right,
But we
they're not
could
asking
even-
for any.
We're not asking.
No,
They're gonna
but we
pay-
could also say additional contributions to rescue squad is gonna be a part of the application.
We could.
That could be, but
Yeah.
let's first learn about the impact.
We could.
So channeling Zach, oh, Nick, are you?
I'm just thinking maybe the question is if for them to review these 3 pages regarding impacts on emergency services and let us know if they think they're accurate.
Yeah, and my recommendation would be those 3 pages
Mhm.
and the DEIS,
They refer to it, yeah, exactly,
which they referred to.
yeah.
Anything else, Nick?
No, I think, I'll come up with some places where citations would be
Great.
useful.
So channeling Zach, who emailed, he did have questions around police and rescue. He also had questions around the shuttle. And so those are all things we can come back to. And then his other major question was affordable housing and the mix and some of those, some details around that. So that's what Zach brought to the table.
Let me just make one more point about the presentation to the Affordable Housing Board. The draft statement had countless references to rent by the bedroom. That is off the table for the affordable housing. That's not the way they rent it. Now, remember, this company, we're not, the concept of affordable housing in a multifamily project, however we want to describe this, is not new to this company. They've done this before, different states, different places, they've done it. So when that issue came up, they said, absolutely not, we rent by the apartment.
Is this media on video?
I believe it is.
How do we get a hold of it?
I don't know that.
Well, you're the chair of that committee, maybe.
We'll turn to the staff.
You know, find out,
Okay.
I'm assuming that they're posted on the website, but I don't know that process yet. They file, so we'll find out.
But I
I
listened
think
to
that's
it.
still in, that's, the by the room is still threaded throughout some of these responses.
And you're
Do you know
talking
that
about
this
Peak
is-
Made, is that what you're talking about? The
Yeah.
management company?
Yes,
Okay, I mean,
So-
I did some research into them because I wanted to, I wanted to find out. The major complaints have been, and this is something I don't think has been brought up before, but the major complaints have been noise. That the walls are thin, that there's a lot of noise, and that there are sometimes what seem to be unfair evictions. So I don't know.
well,
So
Just to clarify what you said, Terry, when you said they will not rent by the bedroom, did you mean the affordable units or any?
they committed to, the affordable units will not be rented by the bed.
The affordable units then would be by the unit.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Jerry, just to clarify the minutes, that's what the developer said, or that's what the Affordable Housing Committee said?
That's what the developer said.
No, thank you.
That's what the developer said.
Terry,
Well,
quick
that's
question.
fine.
I noticed that they said that all the units are gonna be furnished in the affordable units. Will they also be furnished,
Yes. All the units will be furnished for the affordable units and everybody else. We brought up the issue of amenities. Do you have to pay more for the amenities? And the answer was no. Every affordable unit is furnished the same, built the same, and get the same use of the pool and the clubhouse as everybody.
Are they gonna be in a separate area, do you know?
No, they'll be separate.
It's all mixed together.
They'll all be separated throughout.
Okay. So I'll be super brief because we're over the time we thought we might take. I did have questions around the affordable housing. My two big questions were, how they've integrated this definition of family to explain how they'll comply with the law, because they lead with repeatedly the compliance with the law. I'm comfortable with that expansive definition of family and household. And it sounds like this discussion got even further along that, and your board's comfort with it makes me happy about that. If we were to leave, your recommendation is that we eliminate the specifics around the affordable housing units by virtue of the 10% and the types of units which are now specified in this document. Here's the question here's the consideration I have about that. The community, the public, was very focused on understanding how they're going to apply, not just whether they're going to comply with the affordable housing law. So the more detail we eliminate from this document, the more we're not being responsive to what was the public's questions around how's this going to work. So I was glad that they included that table. And I was actually going to say, if you're going to include some of this detail, there needs to be one more layer of detail. And my layer of detail was that if you have 20 units labeled affordable housing of the 200, you're complying with that 10%. But if the unit mix is so much different than the unit mix of apartments throughout the rest of the building, I did the math, actually, the 27 bedrooms is actually 4.4% of the bedrooms being offered in the complex. So while it's a 10% of units, because the unit mix skews toward one bedroom and away from four bedroom, it's only 4.4% of the bedrooms.
I agree, it should be.
So, and they use this justification that Ulster County's affordable housing mix has tended to be toward X. You have 100 examples of what could actually be the calculation. So my feeling is we can have a discussion with the developer to say, if you're going to include the detail, which I might recommend we do because of the fact that it's responsive to the community's questions, then we gotta either tell them that detail has to be negotiable, because what you've actually done is only set aside 4.4 bedrooms, 4.4% of the bedrooms. Or are we going to eliminate that and just figure it out down the road, which might be considered less than responsive to the community?
Can I just point out that as far as a seeker standard, if we're not gonna know all the details right now, things are gonna change, right, when we get further along. So when things change further along, the question will be whether the change from what we examined in this document rises to where we need to take additional look at the environmental impact of that change. So if, I just want to put that thought in your head as far as, because the town or the village law could change too. What it means to have a project that complies with the law might be different a couple of years down the line than it is now. So, you know, having details in here doesn't mean we're locked into those details. They could change. We just need to rethink the environmental impact.
No, you know, that's a very good point, because if they are considering increasing, because 10% is a very small percentage. And so they were considering, I thought, amending the law to increase it to 15%. I think we should include that somehow, that should this change, that they need to comply with the 15% as opposed to the 10%. That, or to whatever increase is made, that it applies. That they shouldn't be grandfathered or something like that into a smaller percentage. And also, I mean, if they're trying to make a point that, oh, well, we're offering, you know, less units, therefore there's less affordable units. I'm pretty sure that if the developer decided to offer a higher percentage of units or more units to be affordable, that the Affordable Housing Board wouldn't object to that. So I don't feel like there's, you know, that the obligation is that they must provide a minimum amount, but there's nothing stopping them from providing more, so they shouldn't, you know. And I thought they were asking about a strategy at the meeting, and I think that what worries me is that there's going to be this false dichotomy of, oh, well, if you are asking for more stringent environmental concerns, then you're against affordable housing. And I don't, I want to avoid any semblance or of that sort of
Yeah, I don't-
analysis, because it's not true.
I'm going to withhold my comments for the next time we're together. But I do think that if the biggest issues we had raised by this board were around environmental impact and affordable housing, and of course, lots of the other things, I think we want to discuss some of the level of detail and backup with them that exists in here, and whether it's adequate. And so I had a couple, and then there's a couple other things that are really editorial that, like they've misspelled the word New Paltz multiple times and things like that, that we can just give as an editorial set of comments. So I'll hold my comments until the discussion with them. But I think we have a lot of the big ideas on the table now, and we're prepared for a discussion. Is it the boards, we don't have to vote on this, but just to make sure everybody's of the opinion that we should invite the applicant and make this a substantial part of our next meeting?
Agreed. I wouldn't even be opposed to having a workshop for this. I think it's very difficult to do other applications and really put our teeth into this and get this done. I mean, we gotta get this done.
Yeah, we gotta see if there are any other applications that are likely to be on the schedule, the agenda next time, like, but
Set two public hearings.
We have
We
two
can
public
leave those-
hearings.
I think there's gonna be reasonable.
And there's one more, the 34 Mill Rock is definitely gonna be on. And I don't know, because we didn't set either of the other two applications for public hearing. My question to you,
They
Mayor, was gonna be, do we carry them into the next meeting? Or
They won't have a public hearing in the next meeting, and they'll only be on the agenda of the next meeting if they submit substantial new information that would make them want. So we would actually, I would recommend we don't include them.
So the short
based on
answer
where
is
we are now.
that you'll have two public hearings and probably two additional applications.
So-
And,
And then if 34 Mill Rock is a lot line revision that was already approved, but has some technicalities to look at. So, Danny's point, you know, it sounds like we could have 90 minutes in the next meeting with the applicant. And we should invite them and get into that. Okay.
would you allow, I read through the whole thing. 2 points that, and one I didn't hear mentioned that I'd like to just bring up from.
Yeah, you're welcome to, Mike.
Thank you. I see they're proposing the bike path or walking trail, whichever it's called, through to the campus. If indeed they're not necessarily gonna be marketing to students, I think that there should be some at least acknowledgement of either bike path, walking path. I don't know if it rises to the level of sidewalk, but exploring it along Route 32. Because not everybody is going to be going to the college.
Yeah.
Especially if it's gonna be a mix of students and non-students, so.
Yeah.
I think that transportation, yes, they're proposing the shuttle, I think the shuttle's great, but I think that's something that at least has to be discussed. I don't know the end result,
Yeah.
and the other thing is, what I read is. Clearly, they're paying for the infrastructure for the water and sewer to be built. But the impact on the existing water and sewer system, what will that impact be in terms of, you know, you have an aging system? So I think that needs to be considered in the FEIS of the impact on the facility. Those were the two things that I saw that weren't necessarily brought up by the public, so they weren't addressed. But I think there are two topics that you guys should bring up that ask them to address.
Great.
Absolutely,
Thanks,
that was
Mike.
what the town EPB was concerned
Yeah.
about, was the impact on the sewer.
Otherwise, I think you guys have hit everything. Oh, and just a point for what you said before, Terry. And Emily can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think because this is part of a seeker document. You absolutely have to consider parking and the number of parking spaces, because there's triggers in seeker based on the number of spaces. So I hear your point and I understand what you're trying to say, but I think those tables for the parking still probably need to remain. in this discussion because it's a part of seeker.
I think it's, what we discussed before, that it's important to remember that these details are not locked in, but they're for our evaluation of the impacts.
Great.
Yeah.
And to clarify, Mike, because we had the same question about the emergency services. The evaluation of the impact on the underlying sewage and water system of the village, is that something you would suggest needs to be completed prior to publication of the FEIS? Or something that needs to be flagged as requiring further investigation?
I don't know enough about the details of the system itself in terms of age and condition.
Let's count on the fact that it's
Yeah,
bad.
my ballpark opinion is that I think it would need a discussion. Not necessarily a level of detail of we're going to do X, Y, and Z,
Okay.
but that there be a discussion of the impact on the central system. Because simply saying, well, we're gonna run the lines, and pay for that ourselves,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
But the overall impact on the community is the rest of the system.
Okay.
There's more on that in the DEIS.
Yeah, and I did not read the DEIS.
Right, no, of course, it's a whole carton,
So
but we may wanna, what we do wanna make sure is that mitigation measures that are needed are identified at this stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks, Mike, that was great.
No problem, thank you.
All right, so we're in a position to bring these major issues to discussion, get the FEIS. I think we should think of the 90 minutes that we spend in the next meeting, all of the input back to them such that other than waiting for some responses to some of the inquiries that we might have, that we've given them all the input back to publish the next version of that.
I'm having trouble keeping up with it, and I'm also worried about version control. I mean, if if we're all editing this and amending it or making changes to it, who's going to collate and how are they going to collate all of this?
Well, they did a pretty good job collating 3 meetings worth of hearing questions, I think, to organize them this way.
So we're gonna give them all of our edits and they're going to take all the edits and put them in.
We're going to review it. We're going to review it. If there's a discrepancy, we're going to say something.
Right, but I mean, okay, but what I'm saying is that if we have to edit this, make edits to it in order to be satisfied with it. If all of us are making edits, are they going to then collate them all? Put them all together?
When we say all of us making edits, we're giving them the feedback of changes they have to make.
Okay,
That's what we're gonna do.
all right.
And if people wanna do that in writing and bring it to the meeting or whatever, that's an option.
Yep. Okay, we have
They're gonna see our minutes from this meeting, so maybe they'll prepare it.
well, they won't have made the edits, but they'll
But they'll
certainly
come
have a
prepared to
record.
answer some of these
Yeah.
questions, I think.
Absolutely, and they'll have a record of all the things that you'd like to
Exactly.
see expanded on. Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second from Terry, all in favor? Great, thanks, everyone.
Vote against ending the meeting.
No.